Hello, everybody, in YouTube land, Facebook land, or wherever you have somehow come across my video. This is going to be part of a series of videos on teaching the play and Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley. Inspector Calls is very widely read here in the UK and abroad. It is one of the plays that several exam boards use for the GCSE examination. So it's one of my favorites actually, and it's one of the ones I love teaching. So I'm going to make several lessons available to students, parents, whoever wants to view these. They will be, if you're reading it for pleasure, these will be of use. If you're a student, these will be good for revision, good to help you along with your studies. And if you're a parent who is now at home with their students, having to homeschool, these can help you as well. Or these are things you can do alongside your students or your children at home. Okay, so these are going to be quite short. They're going to be probably no more than 10, 11 minutes each. They're designed to give you some tasks to do, some things to think about, and you can go off and do them, and then we continue with the next lesson. Now, if this was in a classroom, though, keep in mind that this particular lesson would take a lot longer. So the fact that these are only 10 or so minutes each, don't feel like you're being cheated or that you're not getting enough out of it. You're doing these on your own, so it's going to go a lot quicker. Okay, so today, what we are going to talk about, actually for the first couple of sessions, is the historical backdrop behind Inspector Calls. You can see I have my teaching assistant with me. This is my cat, Cleo, and she loves to get in my lap when I'm teaching. Yes, okay, behave. Um, we're going to discuss the role of women in pre-war Britain. What was their role as far as work? What were they considered? What were their rights? And how this relates to Inspector Calls. This is very important to a couple of the main characters, women characters in Inspector Calls. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is certain acts of legislation that were passed or things that existed at the time that had a direct effect on women. Okay, so now, like I said, if this was in a classroom, I would have students sitting and writing in their exercise books. If we're going to this as an activity, you will see a list of historical events. Write at least one sentence on how this event could have impacted the lives of women at the time. Okay, so yes, in a classroom, you would be writing these away in your exercise books. I would either do a Q&A with students, probably a class of 30, so it would take a while. This is something, if you're working independently, you can do on your own. If you're a parent with your year 9, 10, 11 students stuck at home revising, this is something you can do with them. Okay, so the first one is the 1902 Education Act led to the opening of over 1,000 schools. 349 of these were for women or girls. That got cut off in the globe. Okay, so how would that have impacted their lives? Now they've got schools specifically for them. Would it be positive? Would it be negative? Probably depends on the curriculum, but that's up for you to decide and discuss. Okay, so that's the first one. Number 2, the vacuum cleaner was invented, although it was a luxury item. So it was a luxury item. Not everybody could afford one, but the vacuum cleaner was invented. So would this have impacted women's lives in a positive way, or would it have impacted their lives in a negative way? Positives, yeah, they could probably get their housework done a lot quicker. Negative, it might have kept them in a life of domestic servitude. And I don't know if I'd want to lug that thing around my living room. Anyway, but that'd be a good talking point. Would this be a positive thing? Would this be a negative thing? Or was it both? Okay, next we have in 1919, the Sexual Disqualification or Removal Act allowed women to enter professions such as law, medicine, and veterinary medicine. So this is another good talking or discussion point. Up until this point, women were not allowed into these professions. They were barred from law. They were barred from medicine. They were barred from veterinary medicine and other professions as well. Um, Prior to 1919, women were not really allowed into too many professions. Nursing was one of them. Teaching, but as we'll learn later in the lesson, once a woman was married, a lot of times she had to leave the profession. But is this positive? Is this negative? How was it easy for them once this act was passed? Probably not, but at least now they could not be barred just because they were women. Okay, the 1919 Sexual Disqualification, Act ruled that a woman could sit on juries and serve as magistrates. So again, they're no longer barred from serving on juries. They're no longer barred from being magistrates, which is similar to a judge in a lot of instances. So what impact would this have had? As opposed to also now they're allowed to be doctors, lawyers, and veterinary doctors, having being allowed to participate directly in the legal system. What changes could this bring for women? Right, this one. In 1928, the version of the Book of Common Prayer, women agreed to obey their husbands. So the Book of Common Prayer is obviously a religious book. Religion did play a much greater role in people's lives back then. So having it written is your religious duty to obey your husband. What impact would that have on women's lives? Also, back then, obey your husband was one of the marriage vows you took. I don't think it was officially taken out until something like the 1950s or 1960s. I think you can have it put in if you wish. Why would you want to? But yeah, it was quite late that was actually removed in a lot of churches. But you say you would agree to love, honor, and obey your husband. So what does that do to women's lives, having to agree before a religious figure that you're going to obey this man for the rest of your life? Another thing is it's also led to the belief that wives were the property of their husbands. They were not an equal partner, they were property. So a husband then often thought, well, I can do with her as I wish. She's my property. I own her. Okay, a final slide is many jobs had a marriage bar, meaning a woman would have to leave once she got married. Now, teaching was one of these professions. I think nursing was as well. I'm not 100% sure, but I know teaching was. What did that do to women's lives? Maybe some were happy to leave once they got married, but they believed there were various reasons for it. They believed that now their duty lied with their husband, so they didn't have time for a career because they were going to have children. It seems ridiculous in this day and age. Men did not have this. Men could be in the same profession, be married, no problem. But women, they had to leave once they got married. Okay, so that is the final slide. Those are the talking and discussion points that you could do further research into. You could have some lengthy discussions with your lovely young teenage student at home about these points. But these are very important to the backdrop of Inspector Calls and some of the women characters in there. It was a great time of change for women. That time just after the First and Second World Wars. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed. I will be back with the next set of lessons as soon as possible. Everybody take care. I will post this on my YouTube channel, so any questions, any problems, please just put it in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you, everybody.